Hello, everyone. My name is Mathew Heggem. I am the CEO and founder of 10kcreators.com, and I'm very excited to be here with you today for the very first episode of Creative Success Navigating Our Money Journey. This is a collaboration between myself, 10K Creators, and Mel Peck, the founder of Smartistry. I'll have Mel or Melissa say a few words about that in just a moment, but I have to say that this topic is really important. As the founder of 10K Creators, my mission is to help artists improve how they make and manage money. It's not easy, it's complicated. It's not just a matter of making sure that you have all of your business stuff sorted out. There's personal things that come up along the way. There's technical things that you need to understand about things like investing money, saving money, managing. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this conversation. So as you listen, as you pay attention to the conversation that we have today, take some notes for yourself and think about what you need to do to challenge yourself to really be aiming yourself towards that kind of success that you're looking for in your creative life and your creative career, whatever that might look like for you. Again, we have really awesome guests lined up for you in this series. All of them are clients of 10kcreators.com, full disclosure. So I know a few things about them, and I'm going to push them a little bit to step forward and share some of the insights that they've had in their journeys being professional artists in the world. So with that, Mel, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people about Smartistry?
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm so excited for this series. My name is Melissa Peck, and I'm the founder of Smartistry. We're an organization designed to help empower creatives to live a more sustainable life and to run a practice that really is thriving and helps them thrive as humans. We believe that the intrinsic value of art and what artists bring to the world is simply undo withoutable. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. I'm really excited to meet our guests and to dive in about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is really um, how we as humans and as artists deal with money. What is our mindset about money? What are some of our challenges and our opportunities when it comes to money? And all that good stuff. So, thanks so much, Matt, for putting this together.
You're welcome, Mel. So now we're going to meet our guests. Our guest today is Stephane Duret, who is the founder of Kaiser's Room, the co-founder of Learning Alchemy, and a Broadway superstar. I'm so excited to have you here, Stephane. Before you introduce yourself and give us insight to who you are and what you've been up to, um, I want to just share a few words about my experience having worked with you. I think one of the things that I appreciate about Stephane is that he's very open-minded in terms of having a what I consider an omnidirectional life and career, right? One of the challenges of being an artist is you often want to kind of be able to do just the one thing. Like, oh gosh, I wish I could wake up tomorrow and the only thing I did was grab my paintbrush, stroke away and then go to bed at the end of the day. Well, the truth is, and the reality is, at least in American society, in the US, inside of capitalism, it doesn't work like that. We know firsthand as professional artists that there simply is not enough money in the arts. And it's not to say that there's not enough money in the world. There's plenty of money. Certain people have a lot of that money. But what is missing is enough funding. And so what happens is even if you're talented and you got the credentials and you're doing the thing like Stephane is doing, you still do other things too to help lift up your career. But it's not just about that. It's also about stepping into your full identity. And I think what I really appreciate, Stephane, about you is that you found a way to create other businesses that support who you are and what you stand for in the world as an artist. So it's been a blessing working with you. So I'm going to pass the ball to you. Why don't you introduce yourself and just tell the people who you are? Okay.
What a dream. Thank you so much for that lovely, gracious intro, Matthew. And thank you, Melissa. It's really, really amazing to be here and to chat about these things that tend to go untalked about, the things that we kind of just like make pretend aren't things until they're very much things, especially as artists in this world. So, as Matthew said, my name is Stephane Duret. I am a Broadway performer by trade. I am also the founder and the executive director currently of a nonprofit called Kaiser's Room, We offer arts programming to individuals with cognitive and developmental disabilities. We do this by way of performing arts classes like dance classes, acting classes, musical theater. We also do this by way of interactive multisensory theatrical experiences. This past fall, I guess it was in October, we just launched our newest production, which is called Jurassic Adventure. Went off without a hitch. It was a really, really exciting time. Um, Aside from that, I am also the co-founder of Learning Alchemy. So, in training my teaching artists on how to teach the theater arts to people with developmental disabilities, I talk a lot about, filling our artist well. I talk a lot about, making sure our sensory needs are met so that we are full and then we can show up into the room, into the space, and actually be fully available for our students. Um, and I thought to myself, well, this is actually pretty universal. The example I like to give to people is, have you ever felt hangry, where you're so hungry that you cannot function, you cannot think, you cannot produce? That, my friends, is a sensory need. If your sensory needs are not being met, then there's no productivity. There's no creation. There's not a lot actually beyond that sensory needs. So that's where learning alchemy came from. We work on really embodying experience to really help land training, um, onboarding, uh, culture design, etc. Things to really support people in supporting people. How is the executive team, how are your top function people really supporting the staff that's doing the work to get the job done? um, I'm also an educator, and I just love all things theatrical and musical theater, and I think it's very important, and it's a gift and a blessing that I get to do a little musical theater in all of the things that I do. So thank you for that nod, Matthew. It feels good to be able to say yes and to kind of shift my paradigm. Just because I'm not on a stage does not mean I'm not performing. Does not mean I'm not using the depths of my creativity and my artistry. And I think if we can all just widen our minds just a little bit, we can be more supportive people, um, stronger community members, and have more fun while doing it.
Love that. Yes, more fun always. So, thank you, Stefan, for sharing that. And we're going to get more into some of the challenges that you face in balancing these different obligations because, certainly being on Broadway and being in theater is in and of itself a full-time endeavor, and it requires a lot of you physically, mentally, emotionally. I know you're going through a lot of positive life changes. I won't disclose anything. You can choose what you want to share. But what I do know is that, like, on top of that, you're traveling and you're on the road, and then you got this big show, and there's there's a lot going on there. Notwithstanding the fact that then you're also holding space for this nonprofit, delivering programming, making sure that that gets addressed effectively, and it's not just the front-facing programmatic stuff in the nonprofit. There's the back end, the operations, the finance, the insurance, and then on top of that, you're launching this consulting practice that addresses really. So it's a lot going on, and I think people take for granted, frankly, the entrepreneurial power and business acumen that professional artists have, and actually, honestly, it's harder for us sometimes because we are managing so many different projects and activities. So we're going to want to understand at some point as we unpack today's conversation what it takes for you to be able to do that. But before we do, I want to go back to the beginning, right? Back to the beginning, and tell us how did you get started in theater, and what was the journey like from, let's say, your first theater class to your first day on Broadway? Give us that story.
Oh, how fun. We're talking about a handful of years, just like a small handful of years. No, just kidding. I I maybe was a bit of a class clown my fourth grade, and my teacher, Mrs. Bean, suggested to my parents that maybe I look into auditioning for the theater program at a performing arts elementary school in Miami, Florida. I'm from Miami. And I went, sure, why not? I'd never done a show before. The audition was thrilling. It was all improv activities, and I just had so much fun. I ended up making it into that program. So I went to South Miami Elementary for 1 year for fifth grade. And then I just assumed that my parents were going to ask me to go to the international language program that my brother was at. So I didn't even audition for South Miami Middle. I just went to Carver, George Washington Carver Middle, as a part of the international language program. And that's where I fell in love with music. You know, the TLCs and the Janet Jacksons and the Mariah Careys, just Erica Badu's just like making me feel all like emo and artsy and just like all of the things. Um, and then my eighth grade year, I learned about this school, the School for the Performing Arts, high school for the performing arts, where you could do musical theater. And I was like, you mean I get to do the music thing that I love and do this acting thing that I love on a stage at the same time? Fantastic. So I went to that audition where I also had to do a dance call. And my father likes to tell the story. He's like, "That you cocky SOB." Because after that audition, he just assumed that I wasn't going to make it. And he was like, "Well, let's give him a good solid go. He's got to start learning rejection at some point in time. He knows nothing about musical theater. Like, how is this going to work?" And when he picked me up from the audition, he was like, "How did it go?" And I was like, "Oh, I made it in. I'm in." And he said I was just so matter of fact about it. And that was basically where it all started. I as a in elementary school, I tried visual arts. Nothing really worked out the way I wanted it to, from the brain to the page. I tried music, but it just kind of like felt like it went that way for me. There was something about musical theater. Even when people told me I was bad, I didn't care because I wanted to do it anyway, and I loved doing it anyway. So I just kept showing up, and maybe I got better, maybe I didn't. Who knows? It's all subjective. But I guess I got good enough to make it to a Broadway stage. But that was kind of the full circle. I mean, I've done things from international tours. I worked in Chicago for a little bit after I went to school in Chicago, and then I started working there. I did some local New York theater, from the Public to the Cell Theater to Broadway. So I've done a little bit of everything, and it's fun. It's exciting.
And so now tell us a little bit more about your Broadway experience and what maybe one of your highlights has been from having been on Broadway.
Yeah, so the big Broadway is so very interesting. First, I definitely was over Broadway before I got to Broadway. For me, working at the Public Theater was like the everything. And I was a swing at the Public, so I actually didn't perform on that stage. But I knew Five Guys tracks. Um, so that to me was like real guttural theater. I got into an interesting space with, commercial theater and, capitalism. And I was a little anti for a little bit, where I was just like, that's not real art. These people are sellouts. Um, but of course, once you're granted the opportunity, you're like, yes, I'll be right there. um, but it was really interesting. I had done a lot of work on myself, on, feeling individual, feeling whole. Um, and I feel like once I booked Broadway, I reverted to a younger self. A lot of insecurities actually came rushing back. Um, and it was more expectations that, I mean, they were expectations set upon me as well. I understudied the six factory workers, male factory workers, and I also understudied Lola, who is one of the stars of the show. Um, so some very, very large shoes to fill, and at any point in time, I could be called to either have the first bow of the show as Simon Senior or the very final bow of the show as Miss Lola. So so I was on pins and needles for the better part of 2 years, just like uncertain. Who am I today? Where am I going? For the first time, I was making enough money to actually like support my life and my livelihood. but I was freaked out and terrified the entire time. I felt like imposter syndrome came flushing back, and I had a lot of questions about myself and where I fit into this industry, more so than I expected. So it's one of those, careful when you wish or when you meet your hero. Um, it's also when you set such a goal, such a high standard, and you put so much weight on that expectation that sometimes we're very rigid in the way we choose to accept it. But remembering that it's a job. I actually just watched a video. Shout out to Leslie Margarita if you watch this. Um, she was talking about how it was her commenting on another video, but she was on a podcast where she was talking about work is work is work is work. Rather you're on Broadway or in a smaller theater off Broadway in New York or in Vermont. So long as you are a working performer, then you are a working performer, and that is something to be applauded for. Um, and sometimes people want to look down on you because you're doing a theme park or you're doing a cruise ship. There's no looking down on any artists ever. We can't do it. There are enough people outside of the industry that want to hold us down and take advantage of us and our brilliance and our creativity that we can't be doing that to each other. So I, yes, so that kind of, I'm trying to remember why I got that. Oh, yeah, just the interesting sensations of being at such a great place, um, and tempering those expectations to be realistic.
Yeah, well, and you brought up a couple of different things that sort of ties into the next question that I have, which is really going to be about, and which is really, I'll give you the sort of overarching question and then drop some ingredients in there for you to respond to, which is this question about what, because remember the point of today's session web series, the title of it is Creative Success: Navigating Your Money Journey, right? So obviously there's a path here. It's your career around your creativity. You've achieved success in different ways on your career trajectory, some of it expected, some of it maybe even not expected, right? And in doing so, you've entered into this dynamic. You brought up capitalism. You've entered and worked, right? You've entered into this dynamic where you're exchanging with the marketplace this thing that you have to offer, right? And in doing so, what's really interesting is you brought up the imposter syndrome, you brought up fear, you brought up reverting back to your earlier self or childhood, maybe childhood beliefs or some sort of trauma-based thing that might be coming back to try to keep you in your place, right? And ultimately, I think that in the last part of what you shared is that this is also, there's sort of pressure and expectations when it comes to making money as a professional, right? And I know in my journey as a dancer, I made it. I made it to New York. I got into a dance company. I was performing on all the stages that you're supposed to perform on. I was doing the thing, getting paid to rehearse, getting paid to tour, getting paid to do the stuff, right? Um, but it still wasn't enough money, right? And so there's like an outsider's perspective, and then there's an insider's perspective. The outsider's perspective is like, it goes back to that thing about the judgment piece, right? Of people saying like, oh well, if you're doing it here but not here, then it's not good enough. And if you only did it here, then you'd be making enough money, but actually that's not quite true. It doesn't work like that, right? So I'm curious, as you reflect on your career, um, and maybe we can kind of break this down into two parts. Like, what was your relationship to money going into the arts professionally, and how has your relationship to money evolved as you gained more experience being a professional artist? And Mel, did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to add a little insert into that line of questioning, which is the belief system that you had when you started. Where did it come from? Like what's the baggage that you brought with you? Because I'm curious about that.
Yes, great questions. Ooh, these are loaded. So I guess some of the baggage, if we'll start with that. I was a bit of a sadder kid. And when I say sad, nothing happened per se. Um, but I was a bit quizzical, very pensive, quite introverted, sort of. Um, I'm one of these, oh gosh, somebody told me what it was called, an ambivert. Yes. I present very extroverted, but I'm actually quite introverted. I collect more energy by myself, kind of with my thoughts. But I often felt inadequate. You know, my family, I come from a sports family. We're very Haitian. We're very, you know, machismo is a bit of a thing. Homophobia is a bit of a thing growing up. So not being good at sports, not being particularly good in school, uh, and then having this kind of, oh, I might be gay secret underneath. There were lots of inadequacies. There were lots of me feeling like I didn't quite fit in, um, and that I would never be good enough, until I got to the stage and I was like, oh, I don't have to care. And that's kind of what it was. It was this like, you can think whatever you want to think, and I can still do whatever I'm doing on a stage. And everything is so subjective. You know, some people will applaud, and the very thing that some people are applauding, some people are saying is disgusting, and vice versa. So the arts gives us this freedom to be, and there will always be somebody who's like, that's fire. You just ate. Do y'all know that terminology? That was new for me. I had my college students teach me about eating. Um, I digress.
Is it Riz? Is I think it's Riz is a new one. I'm learning.
I
I
don't
have a
know that
10-year-old.
one.
I have the
Okay.
inside track, you guys. What's coming?
Riz. I don't know that one. That one's new. That's how you spell rice in French.
Oh, well, there you go. Very sophisticated 10-year-olds.
Ooh, Marie, the Riz. Anyway, so I think that's where a lot of that kind of I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, imposter syndrome business came from. So that's the stuff that I kind of dragged into the performing arts world. And again, probably why I kept coming back was this sensation of home, this sensation of, well, when I'm in this space, I might be hypercritical of myself, but it's still okay. Like I'm still here and we're still family. And like maybe I flubbed that line or like maybe I cracked on that note, but like we still have each other's back in this weird way. You just know each other too well for anything to like break you in that way, you know? And one of the things I tell my students often is there is that transitional period where your passion becomes your profession. And then now there's a standard. Now there's a base of like I cannot make any less than this because now this is my livelihood. So that transition can be quite challenging. And so to go back to one of your questions, Matthew, about like how did I kind of piecemeal this? The truth is nothing ever pays enough. So you end up having to do a couple of things. You know, I was bartending when I launched Kaiser's Room. Uh, I was living in Jersey City. I don't know if anybody knows like New York geography, but I was living in Jersey City. I was teaching musical theater at a high school in the Bronx. So it took me about 2 hours to take the train. And I think it took me three trains to get to the Bronx. And I'd have to be there by like 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'm leaving my apartment at like 6 to go there. Mind you, I'm still running Kaiser's Room. So twice a week, I would be teaching our inaugural dance classes and acting classes on the Upper East Side. And then I would bartend on Fifth Avenue. And I was also babysitting a child on the spectrum in Tribeca. That was my life in 2015. None of it paid enough. If I cut any one of them, I didn't pay my bills. So you just wake up at 6 in the morning and you track all of that and you just make it work until 2 o'clock in the morning when you go back to bed and you do it all over again the following day. Um, so then I got to Broadway and well, my schedule was so rigorous because doing 8 shows a week and then also being an understudy, you've got understudy rehearsals. So I was at work quite a bit, 6 days a week, on top of auditions that you continuously do because you never stop. Um, so I had to give up the bartending and the babysitting, and I still kept Kaiser's room. Um, but I was able to kind of put people in place to kind of help support that, teaching artists and things like that. But there's a little thing we like to call Broadway broke. Excuse me. Because yes, you're getting this cute paycheck, but 2% is working dues. That goes to the union straight away. On top of paying your union dues, you have working dues. So 2% of every single check went to the union. My agent got 10%. And then being in New York City, you're paying about 35% of your check goes to taxes, blah, 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 all the things. So at the end of the day, you're actually going home with something like 50% of your check. And it's like, oh, that's fun. That being said, it was the most I had ever made. Um, so the first year, I was able to get myself out of $20,000 worth of debt. The second year, I was able to save $20,000 and get a down payment on the very house that I'm in today. So I've been good with the plannings of my money. What's interesting is the earnings of the money. So it's very interesting.
Let's go a little bit deeper on the planning piece of it, and then we'll talk about the earning piece of it. Because I think the truth is, and this is not excluded to the arts sector. To be fair, right? Like my brother is a trades person, and he is currently working at some place where he's building cabinets. His wife works in the education system. In the K through 12 space. I think he's a para educator, and and family with two respectable jobs, trying to figure out like it's still not enough, and they've got kids, and there's that debate for a lot of people with kids. It's like, okay, who stays home, and is staying home does it cost more to get the job to have the two incomes for the house or not? So this is not an issue that's limited to the arts, and so I highlight that because I think it's really important.
But Matt, it
But what
is interesting. Sorry, I just want to cut in. It is interesting that in that scenario, those trades are without the stigma of the
mm,
artist trades, right? So I have
Interesting.
talked a lot recently about the wear and tear on an artist of being in a sense of existential dread constantly. Um, and the additional burnout that we carry by going, am I good enough? What am I doing with my life? Is this an acceptable contribution to society? And even though the money really is maybe comparable or the struggles are comparable, there is also that additional challenge on our mental health, our physical health, every piece of our holistic life impacted by that additional stigma.
Right.
correct. Well, and to compound it even further, make it harder for us. It's like it's not like something that's easy to explain to your spouse or your significant other, right? Like they don't always, it's but I think every entrepreneur and small business owner can kind of get this. It's like, no, my paychecks don't come every 2 weeks. That's not how it works. So no, I can't plan that way, right? No, I can't put 3% towards retirement because every paycheck, because it doesn't work like that, right? And so it does require, Stefan, to your point, like, and this is something that I've learned extensively too over the last few years in particular, with my cash flow management practices. It requires a lot of diligence around planning, especially planning in the unexpected. So can you share maybe a little bit of wisdom or insight that you have? Like, what is your planning process when it comes to money? What does that look like? Do you have a weekly meeting? Do you like have conversations with anybody? I mean, tell us, like, how does planning actually occur for you in the money realm?
That's actually a really, really good question because, Melissa, as you were bringing that up and as we were talking about people in other trades, I've been very good at at kind of operating at my means. Yep, I tend to try not to go beyond my means, but if it means that like I don't get that bottle of wine, then I don't have that bottle of wine. For a very long time, though, there were two non-negotiables, and they were wine and coffee. But
For
I
mental health.
for mental health and stability.
It's your treatment plan.
Trust me. But, um, but I would say it's more interesting now that I have a partner, that, we have purchased this home. The little nugget of truth that Matthew was kind of alluding to earlier was that we are adopting an infant, and we're expecting a child in February, which is very, very exciting. And
Oh,
it's
congratulations.
not without, thank you. It's not without its stress. It's not without, those long conversations with my husband about like, okay, like, how are we going to afford this? Are we going to, one of us, stop working a little bit, or are we going to work a little bit harder so that we can afford childcare? Or are we, so it's a lot of in this newer part of my life, now that I'm in a relationship and have like the responsibilities of a home and a household, it's a lot of communication and talking, um, and an open communication with like accounts open on laptops and saying like, okay, so this I have here, and if you got this over there, and now we married now, so what's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. So like, okay, what's going where, and how are we negotiating this? Prior to that, it was just a lot of knowing exactly what was in my bank account and what was coming into my bank account and when. I Bank of America and I had some fights. We had several fights. Overdraft fees. There was a time I deposited a check on a Friday, and I was going through Chicago, swiping my card. I got money in the bank, honey. Monday hit, and I think I had like 60 overdraft charges, and it was $35 each. Overdraft, overdraft, overdraft. Because the check that I deposited had not hit until Tuesday. And I got on the phone with them and I was like, this is way too much. Like, I can't, I literally knew how much I deposited into that bank account, and I was spending. I did not go past what I knew was in the bank. Just because I hadn't cleared, that can't be my, that you have to do. And the woman I spoke to on the phone, I threatened her. I'm really non-threatening. I'm not that person. But I was like, this really makes me want to pull all my money out of the bank account and put it under a mattress. And she was like, baby, I've been there and I've done that. She's like, if that's what you need to do, then I will close your account today and we will send you money. Like there's that was basically her way of saying we are not reversing any of these transaction fees. But that really resonated with me. And it was really sound advice. And I think it also is kind of a statement of, being in this capitalist America and some of the struggles that some American people are going through. This is a woman working at a bank. I mean, she's working at the call center, and she was very open and candid, and she was like, I have had to do that. I have been struggling so hard that the thought of keeping a bank account open, I can't do it. I'm doing everything cash, 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 cash. If I don't have it in my hand, I'm not spending the money. And that's kind of the mentality that I started wrapping my mind around. She was like, baby, start writing it down. Balance your checkbook. Actually know what's coming in and what's going out at all times. For a very long time, up until my husband, I didn't do automatic payments. Nothing came out of my account without me pressing a button. So it's that kind of hypervigilance, I think, that kind of hyper awareness and intentionality, I think, is what helps with that process. Because there are some people that are like, I don't want to go to the doctor. If there's something wrong with me, I don't want to know about it. That's not my mentality. People think that with their bank accounts as well. I don't want to check the bank statement. I don't want to check the bank statement. It's like because you don't want to see how in debt you are.
Mm,
You don't want to see how many times you've overdrafted. Go look at it.
You're not an
yeah,
ostrich.
You're not
You
an ostrich. You
yeah,
can't play possum. You can't play dead. You
Yeah.
know, the harm is not going to escape you. It's not going to elude you because it thinks you're dead or not there.
Yeah.
This I can't see you if you can't see me situation, or vice versa.
Well, and so to kind of put a pin in that managing money piece, and then I want to shift over to the making money piece for a moment. It's the other thing that I recommend to a lot of people is just, as uncomfortable as it is, plan to talk about it every week. Plan to look at it every week. And for several years, particularly during the pandemic, I had a friend who ran a Pilates studio in San Francisco, and talk about a business that was impacted by the pandemics. Like she ran a studio, people came to her, right? That was her business model, and all of a sudden, like nobody's going anywhere, right? So we spent basically for I think it was like 3.5 years, every Wednesday 5 p.m. get on the line. Okay, what's your money stuff today? What's my money stuff? And go through, just like we call it the money buddy, right? It's like you have your money buddy, you have a list of things, you've got the letter from the IRS, you've got the bill that has gone unpaid, you've got the checkbook that you need to clear, you've got the little email you need to send to the person for the refund, like whatever it is, you just can't avoid it, right? It has to be addressed, and there's something, I think in the performance arts in particular, and I'll speak for dance in specifically, it's like nothing will get you out of the value of taking class regularly. That's it. Like if you want to be a professional and you want that day on stage, it's not the day on stage that gets you there. It's the hundreds of hours of tendus and plies and going on the ground and getting back up and next day again, next day again that got you to that point in the first place. So it's that level of discipline, right? That's really important. Now let's talk about making money for a second, because I think when I work with different artists, whether it's you, Stephane, or other people, we start off with a broad conversation on money, but at the end of the day, it kind of narrows in on the okay, yeah, but we need to make more, right? So tell me, or tell us about some of the challenges and the learnings that you've had in the process of making money in this multifaceted creative career.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so hard. I don't want to talk about this one. It's the thing that's challenging, that's most challenging is this part, right? Especially as an artist, any artist. I was going to say performing artist specifically, but it really is any artist because our income is in flux constantly. Um, I was in a Broadway show for 2.5 years, and then I was on my butt. So, so when you're collecting that paycheck, when you're used to that paycheck, and then it's not there anymore because your show closed or because your show ended, it was this finite amount of time. Um, these are challenges. So, so how are we getting creative with the way we're making money? And how are we? It's funny, my husband and I talk about this often. I call him a recovering artist. He also went to school for theater, and now does graphic and web design, and he's really really good at it. The man's very impressive. Um, but we talk about value often, and he's like, I can't do a job for less than this because that undercuts my value. And it's a whole other conversation that we can get into at some other time of how we're seeing ourselves and how we're demanding people see us, and then like how there's sometimes a dollar sign attached to that. And I'm still kind of figuring out what that means and how I feel about it all. But that being said, we have accolades, right? Um, just like you were talking about, Matthew, the hours that you spend in a dance studio to perfect the craft, that's what gets you to where you are. And yet, that is an investment that you don't get back. So, when you are pricing your hourly rate or your coaching sessions or your workshops, that stuff has to be in the back of the mind. So, for me to say, yes, you can pay me $50 to teach this workshop, it's like, huh, my expertise says that I've been training at this for decades. I've done this on a Broadway stage nationally and internationally. I run a nonprofit organization that works specifically with people of different abilities. All of these things means I can't actually do this for $50. And that seems like an interesting conversation to have. It seems transactional in the bad way. It seems it seems like you're being a sellout. It seems like you're, not there for the craft. But it's not about that. It's about sustainability.
It's
It's
exactly
about
right. I'm sorry, I just wanted to cut in.
Yes.
Um, if my sump pump dies, me as a homeowner, and I got to call the emergency plumber, and the emergency plumber says it's gonna be $400 plus the cost of the sump pump to replace it for my
Correct.
labor. You don't even know me, and you're gonna trust me to save your property. You have no
Correct.
hesitation. You don't know if that guy went to school. You don't know, like, beyond if he got insurance, like, but you don't know. So why would we as tradespeople have any hesitation to say, I'm the only person that could teach this class that you are looking to teach because of my credibility?
Correct.
It's so, so hard for us to ask for that. And part of it is our own mishigas because we do think we're selling out, right? Like it
Correct.
makes us in some way less artistically worthy.
Correct.
That thinking is really not helpful.
Correct. It's not helpful. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why I wanted to work with Matthew is this idea of dismantling the image of the starving artist. There was something that I idolized. I wanted I wanted a New York apartment with broken windows, and I wanted wood pallets as a bed frame and like a found mattress. Like I was like, yes,
Did you want
I'm
Mimi to come with her candle
absolutely. That's absolutely
and
where I
some
got it from.
tuberculosis? Like,
And tuberculosis, all of the above. All of the above, correct. Just heartbreaking. Like scripts on fire to create heat in the apartment. I idolize this, but you can also like theatrically live that life, but not in reality. You know what I'm saying? Um, so so finding that disconnect, or finding that separation, creating that separation of like this can be my artistic life, but this can also be me putting food on my table and having the things that I want, right? I wanted a house. And for a very long time, I believed I couldn't have one. Just like, I thought I was going to be perpetually single. I never thought I'd be able to have kids. And it's like all of these things are things that we either tell ourselves or we believe when other people tell us. And it really does take some work in unearthing what it is you really want and what you're willing to do to get it. So once you've decided these are the things that I want, the next question is how am I going to get them? And I'm not going to get them by selling myself short. I'm not going to get them for the art. I'm going to get them with the money that you pay me to do the art. You know what I'm saying? So I think, and it really, I used to say, my mom didn't like it when I said this. I was like, yeah, I'm a stripper. And she'd be like, "What are you saying?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, mind you, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with sex work. I'm not here to shame anything. Like you do what you got to do to get that coin, honey. But like you give me money and I dance for you." That's
What a stripper does.
what a
Yeah,
stripper does, and
yeah,
I'm here to support all of it.
I
yeah.
think there's a very long history of those two professions being interwoven.
Interesting, huh?
Hmm.
I don't think that's by accident, but neither here nor there. There is something to be said about, providing a service, providing entertainment. That is what we do as artists. And, some artists will say it's more than entertainment. It is a way of life. And I support that as well and would agree. That said, there are these things that I want. And sometimes these things cost money. All of the emotional stuff I can give myself by listening to Vivaldi or looking at the color chartreuse. You know, you can fill your well with a lot of those things, but those things aren't going to pay your bills. They're not going to keep the lights on. So what are you doing to keep the lights on? You know, and how creative are you being with getting that work? You know, are you okay stringing together a couple of projects that will then pay you what you need? Sometimes you don't sleep, but sometimes that's okay because what I want costs this much money. And if it means I need to cater and babysit a child in Tribeca and teach these classes in the Bronx and teach these other classes, then you do it. You know, so that's another reason why I think artists are so great at all of the things that we do, is because we have this resilience and we tend to have this clarity of like, these are my goals and these are the things I need to attain them. Um, and I think it's the same with money. And removing shame from the equation, I think, is also huge. You're not a sellout for buying a house. You're not a sellout for taking a higher paying job. I told my students just the other day, I was like, if community theater, if you just want to do theater, you can work a 9 to 5 and go to rehearsals at night and do 2 weekends of a show that just give you life in a community theater setting without the union, without the professional, whatever, whatever. You can still do it for fun.
Yep. I
There's
mean,
nothing wrong.
I've had a conversation about that recently where, I mean, you can go be on a softball league for fun. It
Mhm.
doesn't make you a professional baseball player. You don't have to be a
Correct.
professional baseball player, you know.
Correct.
We should make space for
Well,
that,
well,
for artists who just want to do it for the fun, as a
Correct.
side thread of this conversation.
Correct.
well, but I would even add to that, like redefining the term professional, right? Because, I consider myself a professional dancer and a professional choreographer. I am not employed by anybody right now to perform those duties. But now I actually do have a performance coming up January 8th in Seattle. If you want to show up, I'm not getting paid for it. It's a friend who reached out to me. He's a cello player. He's brilliant. It's like, hey, I'm going to be playing the score. You want to perform? I said yes. I am showing up to that event as a professional choreographer and dancer. I'm not getting paid for it. There's no money being exchanged, right? But I think what makes it professional is my attitude, my perspective, my experience, the value and quality of the work that I'm going to put on the stage. Like that's what professionalism is, right? And because the truth is, even the greatest performers, painters, writers, musicians, even the greatest are still underpaid or not paid at all for some of their brilliant creativity. So I think it doesn't do us a service as a sector, and this kind of gets to my final set of questions because we are coming up on time here. It's like there's things that we need to change about how we see ourselves in the creative sector, and in fact how we behave or function in the creative sectors. And I'm curious, Stefan, like if you could, you've been in the world, you've experienced some things, you've shifted your attitude on some stuff, you've grown, you've gained, you've fallen. I mean, all this stuff has happened, right? And so now, if you could sort of wave the magic wand and change something about how we exist or how the creative sector functions, what would that one change be?
Is it just one? Can I have two?
You can have two. I'll let you have two. I'm
Thank
a, I'm
you.
a genie. I might even give you three.
Oh, I'll just take the two. I'm not greedy. Um, so I think the first thing would be funding. I want the arts to be better funded. I do believe we as artists, and these are all artists, I feel like we support this country in a way that is not being mirrored or matched. Um, and I think we should be funded. Um, that's one. And two, I want us to be better people in the creative spaces. Um, to each other. There's still quite a bit of intimidation happening. There's still a lot of competition, but not healthy competition. It's not constructive criticism. It's hurtful, And and one of the things that I'm kind of realizing, as I launched into learning alchemy with the theatrical background, and it's, there are quite a few people that intimidate others or bully others because of the sanctity of the space. I found the theater because it was kind of a home for me where I could fall and get back up, and that would be okay. I'm still accepted. I'm enough. These are the things that, for me, surround musical theater and the performing arts. The second something might look like an intrusion or a threat to that safe space that I've created, I might become a bit vicious about it. So, so wrapping my mind around why some people might be nasty. Like one of the things that I learned that I heard a lot in college, I went to school in Chicago for musical theater, and I went to a school that was very much a Chicago institution that trained Chicago actors to do Chicago theater. And I was one of the only ones that they were like, "You'd do better in New York." And I've heard people say, "You're that commercial theater." People didn't know what to do with me. That was one. And then and then I heard so many straight actors say that musical theater was not acting. And I was like, why do you, what gave you the authority to dictate the validity of the art that I do and the work that I do? Also, bitch, I'd like to see you seamlessly go from speaking to singing to dancing, honey, and make the children feel. That's acting, right? So, and it's just like it's in the visual arts world where like a landscape put up against abstract art, and now you're saying one of them is art and the other one isn't, and it's just like, why are we so quick to cut each other down? Is it because we're underfunded and that there are only so many pieces for people? Like maybe that's why. But those would be my two wishes. I would like funding for the arts, and I would like more artist support in the artist community.
Correct. I'm with you on that. And I do think, and this comes into the conversation around money, right? We talk about the scarcity mindset, and I think what happens in the arts is people get a piece of their pie, and then they iron gate it and hold it, and I understand why, right? That it becomes a reliance on income to pay the bills, and then and all the struggle that comes with that. But then people start to turn on each other, and yeah, so it's a challenging thing. So last question, Mel, did you want to say something before we do the last
Well,
question?
I do. I believe that the systems of oppression
Mm,
have a very vested interest in us not talking about our concerns. And I think
Mm-hmm.
part of combating that scarcity mentality is having conversations like this, and being much more transparent about our finances, about what we earn, about what we need, about what we're asking for, collective bargaining, all of that stuff. Um, it's systemic. The belief system is passed on to us from our professors. And by the way, Stefan, I'm from Chicago and we have some crossover we should connect on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I see you and I know what you're talking about. So
Thank you. Yes.
yeah, that the legitimacy factor in Chicago theater, I get it. Um, it's a tool. This conversation and conversations like this are a tool for us to
Mm-hmm.
um, build a revolution in
Mm-hmm.
mindset, and it has to
mm,
happen.
Mm-hmm.
word.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. No. So last question for you, Stefan, and then we'll close up with the how do people get in touch with you question, right? So that's actually the last, but the last question before that question is what, so this title of this is Creative Success Navigating Our Money Journey. So we have people who are listening who might be starting their careers in the arts, might be thinking about a career in the arts, or maybe they're at a turning point early on in their career where they're trying to figure out, okay, what's next? How do I make the move and continue this journey? What's like that one piece of advice that you have to people that is something you learned about your journey that you'd like to share with others?
Yes. If it's back to specifically about the money and the money journey, um, look at your stuff. Look at your stuff. Know what's coming in, know what's going out, and know why. Um, don't let things sneak up on you. Don't let things be accidents like overdraft fees. Like granted, I got very good at them, but man, oh man, I've lost so much money to overdraft fees just for not paying close enough attention. Um, so that would be my advice.
Good. Thank you, Stephane.
Yeah.
Melissa, any final comments?
I want to ask one burning question
Yes.
because I know you are a multi-passionate entrepreneur and you have
Yes.
a lot bubbling. Do you have a personal mission statement?
Oh gosh. You'd think I would have taken it to memory. Yes, I'm gonna give you the truncated version. I actually wrote it out. It's on my website, which is one of the ways you can get a hold of me. StephaneDuret.com. Actually, I think it's StephaneDuret@gmail.com. I don't think I have a thing on the website. There might be. Moving on. Um, so my overarching mission is to create space for acceptance and self-expression, to kind of truncate it. Um, Creating the space is big for me. It comes back in every realm. It's a part of everything that I do, from from the work that I do on stage to the work that I do in a classroom to the work that I do with a nonprofit. I just want to create the space where people can feel accepted and feel heard. And that, I think, would be my mission in life.
Thank you, Stephane. All right, and last question. So you said your website. What other websites or ways in which people can get in touch with you, Stephane?
Yes, so I am on LinkedIn. I am Email's probably the best way though. Should I give my phone number as well? I'm a big texter, but I'm not gonna do that. Yes, let's
You gotta
not.
earn that right, honey.
I'm
Exactly.
so old school. I'm like, call me, child. I don't know. Um, Email's good. LinkedIn is good. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but I'm really bad at DMs and social media. So email is the best way.
Noted. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching and for tuning into the first episode of Creative Success Navigating Our Money Journey. We have several other artists we're going to be interviewing along the way, so please watch those videos as well. And if you have any questions, comments, curiosities, please reach out to Mel. This is being hosted on the Smartistry platform. Mel, you want to say any of the final things about Smartistry before we end the session today?
Just gratitude so much, Stefan. Thank you for a great conversation. The work that we're doing to help create transparency in this artistic world means everything to me. Matthew, thank you so much for the collaboration. I can't wait for our next session. So, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye bye.